And we are back after a break last week. Welcome back into the Pigskin Cafe. My name is Hampton Sipper, and I will be your host this evening. And joining me tonight, the man who went solo last week, filled in for me and Chase, and did a little hot seat watch in college football. And man, Graham was more bang on than he even thought at the time because one of those five has already gotten fired in Brian Harsin at Auburn. Graham, how we doing tonight? You're batting 200 with a chance to go 5 for 5 by the end of the year. How you doing, man?
Hey, doing good. Not all of us can take a week off. Some of us have to keep putting in the work whenever other people are taking off. But I enjoyed doing it, man. Um, I hope that people listening to it did.
Mm-hmm.
If I told you this, I was surprised that one of them already became true. I think we all knew um, that it was going to happen. I just didn't think the reason I recorded the podcast last week to send it out was thinking like, okay, let's look 5, 6 weeks down the road. So
Mm-hmm.
that way, whenever it's conference championship time, it's not going to blindside us. Well,
Yeah.
I, I'm not saying I'm speaking things into like reality, but I talked about it. Then one game, then he's fired.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, you never hope that somebody's fired. You never like cheer for people
Yeah.
to lose their jobs, but it does make you feel good whenever you're like, you know what,
I
I
nailed
was
it.
right. So
Yeah. And you did an excellent job, man. I enjoyed listening to the episode, and I know our listeners out there did as well. So if you haven't checked that one out, be sure to head over to our YouTube page, check that one out, and subscribe while you're there. Leave a like, leave a comment, and hit that notification bell. We've got a jam-packed show tonight, guys. We're going to recap week 9 of college football. Not the best weekend of games, but still a good weekend nonetheless. Then we're going to look ahead to week 10 like we usually do. We're going to preview Bama LSU, big matchup, decides the SEC West. Georgia Tennessee really decides the SEC East. Then we're going to talk about Notre Dame Clemson, Texas and Kansas State, and Wake Forest versus North Carolina, who is really, really hot right now. Drake May is playing, honestly, top 3, top 5 quarterback in college football so far this year. So that's going to be a fun one matching up against Sam Hartman. But before we look ahead, let's look back. Graham, give me your biggest takeaway from week 9 of college football.
yeah, I think my biggest takeaway it involves week 9, but it involves weeks 1 through 9, and is my evaluation of them. And I'm just going to be honest. There are two frauds in college football. They have been selling the snake oil, as Chase likes to say. They've got the sheep's wool over your eyes. The first one is Oklahoma State. I mean, my goodness gracious. I don't know.
Embarrassing.
I don't know. I mean, truly embarrassing. That's the best word for it. Losing 48-0 to Kansas State. Kansas State's a good team. This is no
To a
like,
backup quarterback at
yeah,
Kansas
yeah.
State.
This is no like, knock at Kansas State, but it sure is at Oklahoma State. I
Mhm.
I think I saw it. It might not have been Oklahoma State, but it might have been a parody or a parody based off who you listen to. Um, the comment was it was a social media post. It says at least we didn't lose 49-0. You got close. I mean, 48-0 to Kansas State is truly despicable. Whenever Oklahoma State had set themselves up to have a phenomenal season,
Yeah.
most likely ending up in a New Year's Six bowl, or if they the tables turn the right way, even a chance in the college football playoff. Because it came down to Oklahoma State and TCU in the Big 12. Kansas State is talented and could be in that conversation, but they've had several knocks on their schedule. But man, Oklahoma State is the first fraud of college football. Had us all believing, and I don't know if you could have disappointed. I don't know if there's been a bigger disappointment, like game wise, than Oklahoma State losing to Kansas State. I mean, you might can make the argument for Oregon losing to Georgia that way, but
Mhm.
that was truly despicable. And the
Mhm.
second one is a team that we like to talk about a lot. Kentucky. They
Don't you
are fraud.
dare. No.
Kentucky and Will Levis are frauds. They are frauds, Hampton. We talked about them possibly being contenders in the SEC East. I mean, we shoot in Georgia, and we talked about Tennessee and how we were
Mhm.
high on them, but we've been high on Will Levis. But my gosh, Kentucky has gone back to the Stone Age of college football. I mean, it truly is horrible to watch. They've been losing close games along the way, losing to Ole Miss the way they did, and it was kind of like, well, maybe this Kentucky team just didn't come to play. But Tennessee, got to give them credit. They're a good team. But Kentucky is not a good team. And that might lead into our conversation later of uh, head coaching vacancies. But I'm not saying Mark Stoops getting fired from Kentucky, but
Wow.
there might
Breaking
be a chance
news.
there might be a chance that he ends up somewhere else at the end of the year.
Mhm.
Hampton, what's your takeaway from week 9 of college football?
Well, you kind of stole mine, but
Oh man, sorry.
I'll add another one. That again, great minds think alike. Kentucky, man, Kentucky, 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 or shall I say, what in the Iowa, what in the 1950s offense is Mark Stoops running in Lexington, Kentucky? You and I have been a big fan of this program for the past 2 or 3 years that we've done this show. We picked them second last year in the East. They proved us right. I picked them second this year. I believe you picked Tennessee, so
Did
you were bang on with that. Um, but I really like the program Mark Stoops is building. I like the brand of ball they play. They're very physical. They pride themselves on running the ball, playing good defense, and just being a really sound football team. And Will
mhm,
Levis, we both thought last year was going to really improve that team's chance of competing at a high level because he could throw the ball downfield and was actually the first competent quarterback that they've had in Lexington since maybe Jared Lorenzen. I mean, I'm not even joking. It's been that long since Kentucky has had a viable quarterback. Last year he had a solid year. He really did. I think he threw 31 touchdowns, something like that. But he had Wandale Robinson, who was a big contributor in that success. Chris Rodriguez had a really good year. And I think the sneaky offseason move that was not talked about enough was Liam Cohen leaving that program and going back to the NFL. And I believe they replaced him with Marcus Satterfield. I believe that's his name. And what I watched on Saturday versus Tennessee, going into the game, you've got to know that Tennessee's strength on defense is that run defense. They're before the Alabama game, I know they were seventh nationally in stopping the run. I don't know where they rank now, but I imagine it's around the same area code because they did pretty well against Alabama. Then they played UT Martin. UT Martin probably didn't decrease them in that ranking at all. And then they play Kentucky. And Kentucky, like you said, they're predicated on that run game. And man, it was like first, second down, let's run the ball and run straight ahead at them. No creativity. And then third and long, we're going to just drop back and pass. Like there was no flow. There was no effort to throw the ball vertically to Berrien Brown and Dane Key and let Will Levis kind of show off that big arm he has and attack the weakness of that Tennessee defense, which is that secondary. And I just don't understand the philosophy to not be aggressive in a big game like that and play very reserved, play very close to the vest. And I mean, it looked like an Iowa football team. I mean, I want to read you the stats from this game. Will Levis was 16 of 27 for 98 yards, had 3 picks. As a team rushing the ball, they had 36 carries for 107 yards and a touchdown. I mean, that ain't going to get it done, Graham. Like
mm,
that's pathetic. And for anybody who ever says again that Will Levis is in the same tier as Bryce Young or CJ Stroud needs their media credentials taken away. You can tell me about the tangible arm size and the strength and oh he's a great leader and great kid. Produce, man. Produce. You like Kentucky is not at the stage in their program where that they're little old Kentucky. You know how
yeah,
like
poor
when
old Kentucky.
Clemson, little old Clemson, they're not there. They have been recruiting well enough where they got talent on that team.
Hmm.
I mean, Berrien Brown's a 5-star. They've got a good offensive lineman. Will Levis was a highly touted kid coming from Penn State. I mean, they've got talent. Act like it. Don't go in this game acting like, oh, we got to play really safe and really in a box. I mean, I love Mark Stoops, and I think he's a really good coach. There need to be some wholesale changes in Lexington from an offensive philosophy standpoint in the offseason, or this is going to be what you're going to get going forward because, you were number 2 in the East. Now you're going to be now you're at least third. Tennessee's, not going anywhere, I don't think, with the class Heupel is going to be bringing in. Georgia's not going anywhere. Florida's only going to get better. And now they're not even third. South Carolina's third because South Carolina beat Kentucky. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I'm very disappointed. Not even if they would have lost and put up a valiant effort, I'd have been fine. But they got physically manhandled against Tennessee, and their offensive approach was from the 1950s. And that was my big takeaway. My other big takeaway before I kick it back to you to kind of close this out. I know I rambled on, but man, that fired me up as someone who really likes Kentucky and really likes Mark Stoops. The other takeaway I had was South Carolina. Very odd game against Missouri,
Mm-hmm.
and you come off a big win against Texas A&M, and you drop the ball, and then you have Spencer Rattler after the game talking about how players didn't feel prepared and they didn't know what was really being asked of them. That makes me kind of side eye at Shane Beamer and that coaching staff.
Mm-hmm.
I
Taking
mean,
a week off.
yeah, they played terrible and they got dominated in the trenches. That was the most alarming thing of that game. So that was another takeaway. And then got to give a shout out to Lane Kiffin for the troll job with Jimbo Fisher. Elite trolling. Um, the clown comment was great. And then, 300 yards against a bunch of 5 stars was just wonderful. I loved that. Loved him sticking up for old Nick Saban. But even in a down week, as far as pure games in college football, it still delivered and still gave us plenty to talk about. You got anything else to add before we kind of move on to our preview portion of the show, Graham?
Yeah, I got a correction for you. The
Oh,
offensive
no.
coordinator for Kentucky is Rich Scangarello. Marcus
Where did I
Satterfield's
see
offense.
Satterfield at?
Marcus Satterfield's the offensive coordinator for South Carolina. You're thinking
Oh,
your
I
your
saw
your
a
brain
tweet.
was like 2 steps ahead of you.
My bad. Well,
Yeah,
he needs to go too because their play calling was not very great either.
yeah, and this is the quote from Mark Stoops about their loss to Kentucky and about the offense. He says, "Obviously, not very pleased with the result. Not going to give a big headline, but not pleased. Here's the kicker:
Okay.
better get it fixed, or you're not going to last. So everybody better do better." So
Yeah,
yeah,
everybody,
I think
including
he's
you, Mark,
yeah,
including you.
I think he's getting fed up with their offense. He kind of further in that interview, he talked about just the complexity of the offense. He kind of thinks they might be trying to do too much and just simplifying it.
I
But
wonder if it's a very pro heavy type scheme, like putting too much on the quarterback instead of letting the guys go out and play a little bit. I think
yeah,
that's sometimes a Bill O'Brien issue at Alabama. So I could see that.
yeah, I think that's true. Also, this is the last thing I'll say about Kentucky.
Hmm.
Um, I think that Will Levis is getting comparable treatment to a player in the past that we like to talk about for more of the hype than the actual results. And he reminds me a lot of Shea Patterson. I think that Will Levis is a better quarterback than Shea Patterson, but they thought Shea Patterson was the savior of the world at Michigan. He came to Michigan. He's going to take us back to take us to the promised land. And he never did. And so, like I said, I think that Will Levis is better than Shea Patterson, but to me, it's sort of comparable. They're trying to put all the pressure on Will Levis to take them further than they can possibly go,
Hmm.
then and not really rely on the talent that he has. And so they're
Hmm.
kind of, I think Will Levis is talented, but I think they're kind of over emphasizing the talent he has that it can make up for a poor offensive scheme
Hmm.
and not as many weapons.
Agreed. And the O line hasn't been very good this year. To kind of play devil's advocate for him, but I think his decision making is very questionable at times.
Mm.
And then the play calling, like I said, it's very much first down run, second down run, then you're in third and long. I don't care who you are. That's not a very good recipe for
No.
success of football at any level, high school, college, or NFL. I mean, you're just
Yeah.
not going to live converting third and longs over and over and over again throughout the game. So I think a lot needs to change in Lexington. Not saying the program's broken or anything like that, but you're in year 8, Mark. You're in year 8. You got your guys. You've recruited well. I need to see more fight and
Mhm.
more. You need to be more competitive in a game
Yeah.
against Tennessee going forward. And I hope for his sake, because I really like the guy, I hope they kind of get that improved and really look to change some things going forward. Well, Graham, let's get in to this week's slate and what a dandy we have. Man, this slate rivals the October 15th one where, Alabama played Tennessee, USC, Utah, a couple other really good games on that day. And, man, we've got a jam-packed one this Saturday, and I, for one, cannot wait. Let's start off with Alabama traveling to LSU. I believe they're 11-point favorites. Both teams are coming off a bye. LSU is one of the hotter teams in the country right now. They're riding high after beating Florida, which I don't know about you, Graham, but Billy Napier, I think, has his work cut out for him. I think that Utah win
Mhm.
maybe inflated our view of them in a way that's not actually who they are. I think
Yeah.
um, that kind of skewed our perception of them a little bit because they have not played very well since then, other than they played all right against Tennessee. But LSU really got the offense going in that game. Then they got the offense going against Ole Miss, who beat A&M on Saturday, has a very potent rushing attack, but their defense is terrible. I mean, they gave up 28
Mhm.
points to Texas A&M, and that's the most points that they had scored all year, I believe, against the Power Five opponent, if I'm not mistaken. So Alabama coming off a bye, kind of limping in a little bit. Had the Tennessee loss, had Mississippi State where they dominated, they played well. Offense was a little clunky. Bryce Young trying to recover from that shoulder. How do you see this game going? And give me a prediction, man. Do you think LSU has a legit shot to upset the Tide, or do you think Alabama will exploit their weaknesses and kind of make a little bit of a statement on Saturday?
Yeah, I think the LSU definitely stands a chance. Playing in Baton Rouge, I think the 6 o'clock kickoff, so sort of not a night game. That plays into LSU's favor. Their
Mm-hmm.
crowd's going to be excited because they've really been playing well as of recently. They've been playing their best football these past couple weeks, especially starting out the year. Big loss to Florida State. It kind of threw things in limbo, and then losing to Tennessee the way they did kind of made everybody question what Brian Kelly could do at
Yep.
LSU. But when you look after that, they played Florida, they played Ole Miss, and they really played well in both those
Mm-hmm.
games. And the thing that I was so impressed with wasn't how they started the game, but it was after they took several punches, how they responded, in which I kind of thought we talked about that this LSU team, if one or two punches, you might knock them out. And they have not shown that. They are resilient. That Florida game was fairly close. It was very competitive, and then LSU takes off. Second half, and then you look at the same thing happens against Ole Miss. Ole Miss gets up early, and then what does LSU do? They kind of calm their nerves, and they respond by scoring what, like 30 unanswered points or something crazy
Something like
like that.
that. Weren't they down 17-7 at one point, I
Yeah,
believe?
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it really was a big, a fairly large deficit, and they came back and overcame it. And so, um, I think a lot of credit has to be given to Jaden Daniels. He kind of leads their offense, but they've been balanced. They've shown in the past few weeks that Jaden Daniels can make some throws. He can extend plays with his legs, and their defense, just keep us in the game, just keep us in the game, and they've done a good job of that. Um, Alabama coming off bye week, I think that obviously goes into Alabama's favor. They've had 2 weeks to prepare for LSU. I think the key to the game: keep Jaden Daniels in the pocket, don't let him beat you running wise, and then limit explosive plays. If you'll do those two things, Alabama is the more talented team, more cohesive team, and I think they will win. I'm going to go with a score prediction of 38-17. I think that
Oh,
Alabama
wow.
wins fairly convincingly. And I think that, we talked about Alabama missing some of the dogs in the clubhouse. I think that they might come out against LSU at Baton Rouge. And that fan base is going to be really excited.
Mm-hmm. Wow, 38-17. I'll tell you right now, if Alabama beats them by 21, I'm going to be a pretty happy guy, especially after Alabama's road struggles over the past 2 years, which we have talked about a ton on this podcast because it's a real thing. I mean, Alabama has
Yeah,
struggled going on the road. They've lost their composure at times, made many self-inflicted mistakes, and I think I've got to expect that going into Baton Rouge until they show me and prove otherwise. I've got to factor that into how I think about this game.
sure.
But even with all that, all the stats and all the math point to this being a really bad matchup for LSU. And I say that because I think the past two games with LSU have really, like when Florida beat Utah, I think it skewed our perception of them a little bit.
Hmm.
Because, like I mentioned, Florida's defense is pretty trash. Ole Miss's defense ain't much better, and that was the only time that LSU has really kind of looked like they're firing on all cylinders, really. And it starts with Jaden Daniels, like you mentioned. He is the offense. He is the spark plug, and they go as he goes.
Hmm.
And I think what the thing that they should be concerned about in this game is I heard on the Late Kick Show with Josh Pate, great guy and great good friend of the show. He's been on our podcast before. Um, he talked about LSU only has 3 games this year where they've had a 100-yard rusher. I
Wow.
believe one was Mississippi State, and they really kind of pounded on them in the second half after Mississippi State went 3 and out over and over and over again.
Hmm.
And I believe the other two have come the past 2 weeks. And that 100-yard rusher was not a running back. It was Jaden Daniels.
Yeah.
So I think Alabama comes into the game with a game plan. We're taking away their running game. We're
Hmm.
taking away Jaden Daniels' legs. Keep him in the pocket, like you said. And he's shown an improved ability to make throws, but a lot of them have not been really down the field. They've been those intermediate throws on the boundary, like deep curls, deep pitches, comeback routes.
Hmm.
And I don't think Alabama's going to give him those freebies. I think they're going to challenge him and say, beat us deep. Because, I mean, he really hadn't this year. That had been a strength of his. And his passing has gotten better as the years going along, like I said, kind of as that running game and using his legs have. But I think Alabama's going to be able to neutralize that. And I think on offense for Alabama, they're going to be able to have success on this LSU defense. I think they're a pretty good unit. I don't think they're an elite unit. I think Alabama's going to be able to run the ball pretty effectively with Jahmyr Gibbs. I know Saban said today he felt like the bye week did the offensive line a lot of good. He thinks they're really starting to come together, which I think is a very encouraging development for Alabama. And I think Bryce Young – more rest for that shoulder. I think he's going to have a really big game. He thrives in environments like this. And I think the young guns, Bond, Prentice, Ja'Cory Brooks, and maybe even Tyler Harrell are going to be the difference and are going to be able to generate enough points to go into Baton Rouge and win 37-24. I really like Alabama in this matchup. I think LSU definitely can win. Um, Obviously, there are pathways to victory. I just think they have a very limited way of attacking you
Hmm.
offensively. And I think Alabama's going to be able to take that away because, contrary to popular belief, last stat I'll throw out before we move on to the next game, Alabama's given up the sixth fewest touchdowns this year in 15, and 7 of them came against Tennessee.
Wow.
So that tells you one game doesn't define a defense. Alabama's defense has been really, really good this year, other than
Mhm.
that Tennessee game. And of course, you can't throw that out. That game happened. It showed holes in that defense, but I don't think LSU is capable from a personnel perspective to attack the Alabama defense like Tennessee did. I think they're uniquely equipped to do that. So give me Alabama 37-24. Going to be a fun one in Baton Rouge after the game of the weekend, number 1 versus number 3. And Georgia ain't going to be number 1, folks. The Tennessee Volunteers are number 1 for now. They're going to be heading into Athens to face the Georgia Bulldogs. Graham, this is one that we've all been waiting for. It decides the SECs. The winner goes to Atlanta. After this past game with Georgia, kind of struggling a little bit against Florida, who I don't think is a very great team. I think Napier's going to get it built up into a good program, but right now they just don't have the athletes, the personnel to compete with Georgia. But Tennessee does. I want to ask you, man, do you think Tennessee pulls this upset, even though they're number 1, they're still underdogs in this game? Do you think they pull the upset, or does Georgia keep the hold on the SEC East for another year?
Yeah, I mean, this one's so tough. I'm so back and forth on what I think is gonna happen. Um, in our, prediction show at the beginning of the year, I said that Tennessee would have one loss in the SEC, and that would be to Georgia. It completely, went past my mind that they play Alabama every year, and so that was just kind of a quick, "Oh, Tennessee's gonna make improvements. They're gonna have one loss this year, and it's gonna be to Georgia." It's setting up for my prediction to come perfectly true.
Mm-hmm.
So since I predicted that, Tennessee's gonna win. Tennessee's not gonna let me be
Whoa, what a
right.
heel turn, Lee Corso style.
Exactly. I think Tennessee is one of the few teams in the country that when playing other elite teams, they can beat you without you making mistakes. And I think when you look at this Georgia defense and how they played several years under Kirby Smart, it's a team that doesn't beat themselves. They are opportunistic. They get to the quarterback, they get turnovers. I think Tennessee's a team that Georgia can still play a good game, not make many mistakes, and Tennessee can still win. I think this is just all the everything's rolling for Tennessee right now. And I'm going to base my prediction off one thing. I was watching the uh, Top 25 show on ESPN last night, and they interviewed Josh Heupel after Tennessee was ranked number 1.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Tennessee's due for not a letdown. They're due for a game that, hey, it's going to be a nail biter to the end. Um, but
Well, they had
he,
that 2 weeks ago versus Alabama, to be fair, 2 or
yeah,
3 weeks ago. But yeah.
yeah. But Josh Heupel was smiling in ways that most coaches don't smile. I think that Tennessee's going to have a great game plan. You think I'm silly, but that's what I'm basing my prediction on. I think Tennessee, their offense is explosive. I think that Tennessee hadn't been here in a long time, and so I think they're going to be focused and locked in. They know this is their biggest game of the year. They already beat Alabama. If you
Mhm.
beat Georgia, you are in the SEC championship game. You know, contending that you don't lose the rest of the season.
Which they
But
won't.
yeah, which they want. They beat Georgia. So this is the most important game they will play this year because if they beat Georgia, they could still lose an SEC championship game and possibly make it into the college football playoff. I think that Heupel knows that. Tennessee players know that. The Tennessee fan base knows that. I saw where two very large Tennessee donors were buying up every free ticket that they could, every spare ticket, to show Georgia that it wasn't going to be their home field advantage. I think there's going to be a lot of Tennessee fans there. Still going to be heavy Georgia because obviously a home game. But man, I think I've got to go Tennessee. I think that their offense has they just do too many things well for Georgia to just be able to contain them. I don't think it's going to be like a 52-49 shootout like it was against Alabama, but I definitely think it could be a 31-24, 31-27, a close game, and one of those where the last team that has the ball wins. So I'm going to go with Tennessee 31-27 because I can't be wrong twice. I'm not doubling down on my prediction that Tennessee is going to be one loss. I'll just split the pot and take some of it with pride.
Well, before I kind of get into my analysis of the game, really enjoyed yours, by the way. I think
Sometimes that's what it takes. Just what does your
so
gut? What does your gut tell you? What does your
what's your
gut tell
gut
you?
tell you, man?
Yeah.
Uh, much rather go with your gut than analytics. But anyway, um, I just want to know if the AARP is sponsoring this game. As old as both of these quarterbacks are, Stetson Bennett being 25 and Hendon Hooker being 24, about to turn 25. But I digress. There's no competitive advantage in that at all. But I think this game is fascinating on many levels. I think Georgia has a unique advantage of watching Alabama play
True.
Tennessee and kind of taking some notes from there, what worked, what didn't work. And I think the biggest difference that Georgia probably is going to try that Alabama didn't, I think they're going to try to pressure Hendon Hooker and force him into mistakes. I think that was a big mistake that Alabama did not do that because the few times that he had pressure on him, he threw one pick, he about threw another, and then he threw one and then it got called back due to a PI. I think Georgia knows they can't sit back and just let him survey the field and then one of the receivers is going to pop open. I think they're going to try to dictate to the Tennessee offense instead of letting Tennessee dictate what they want to do to them. I think Tennessee's still going to be able to run the ball pretty effectively. This Georgia defense is good. It is not last year's unit.
Mhm.
Not even in the same realm, in my opinion. I think they're a really good unit. They got a lot of talented players, but they took a hit by losing Nolan Smith, their starting edge player, last week after the Florida game. I think he suffered a pec injury, so that is something to watch. But I think, as compelling as that matchup is, I think Tennessee is still going to get their points. I don't
Mhm.
think if Georgia holds them to like 24 or something crazy like that, I would be shocked. I think they're too high powered. Hendon Hooker is too good, and they're just on a roll. I don't think they're going to
Mhm.
hold them to 24. The key for Tennessee in pulling this upset and winning this game is what they do defensively.
Mhm.
As we've talked about before, their defense, their rushing defense is really, really good. Well, Georgia's offense, to me, they're not great at running the ball this year. Now, last year, that was very much a focal point for them was Zamir White, Kenny McIntosh, James Cook, all those guys, but they're not the same team from a rushing offense
Mhm.
perspective. Now, passing, they're much improved. They run their passing game through their tight ends. They Brock Bowers,
Which are some studs.
which are some studs.
They're
Yeah,
not
Brock
just
Bowers,
average tight ends. Yeah.
Darnell Washington. Yeah, they're the best tight end room I've probably ever seen in college football. I mean, they're
Pro-
legit. They're great.
it probably the best overall unit in college football. I would probably argue that.
It's either them or Alabama's outside linebacker room, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But they're very good. Stetson Bennett has taken a step this year, which he should. He's 25 years old and has been in school for 7 years. But all kidding aside, he's been very good, very
Yeah.
efficient. He did not play very well against Florida. He made many mistake. He was blessed a couple passes weren't intercepted, and I think they don't have any receivers on the outside that scare me. Those tight ends are really good, and you can match them up all day long. But against a team like Tennessee, where you're going to probably be in a little bit of a shootout,
Mhm.
I don't know if you can win a game with Stetson Bennett just throwing the tight ends the whole time. Now, I do think they're going to try to play ball control a little bit, keep the ball out of Hendon Hooker and Tennessee's hands. But I think if push comes to shove and Tennessee pushes that gas pedal down and it gets a shootout, I got to go with Tennessee. I don't think Georgia's going to be able to keep up with Hendon Hooker with Stetson Bennett at the helm and the lack of receivers that they have on the outside. And I think Tennessee showed last week, kind of like that LSU unit in 2019, their defense isn't great, but it's getting a little bit better each week, gaining some confidence, and I think it's at an all-time high going into Athens, Book it. Tennessee wins this game. They continue the magical run, and they win in Athens, and they're heading to Atlanta for a rematch, possibly with Alabama. Man, going to be a fun one, Graham. Can't
Score
wait to
prediction.
recap it with you next week. What you got, buddy?
Score prediction.
I'm going to go Tennessee 30. I'm going to go Tennessee 35, Georgia 28.
Okay.
That's what I'm going to go with.
Look it.
What I'm going to go, no, Tennessee 41, Georgia 34. That's what I'm going to go
Okay.
with. I think it's still going to be high scoring. I don't think they're going to score
Mm,
52 like they did against Alabama because I don't think
yeah.
Georgia is going to implode at home like Alabama did on the road a few times with giving
Yeah.
them extra possession. So 41-34 Tennessee. Shout out, Jeb. Love you. And I am pulling for you on Saturday because um, I want another chance at you. We'll
Yeah.
go to our next game. We're going to do rapid fire on these last three, Graham. Notre Dame hosting Clemson off a bye week. Notre Dame's been playing well as of late. I know they lost to Stanford, but they're kind of hitting their stride a little bit. Marcus Freeman seems to have righted the ship. Who do you got in this one really quickly?
This one's tough.
It
I'm
is
gonna go.
very tough.
Yeah, I think this is one of those games where Clemson could lose, but I'm gonna go with Clemson. I think they just have too many weapons right now, and Notre Dame's playing hit or miss football. If you hit them at the right time, then you'll blow them out. If you hit them at the wrong time, they could beat you. But I'm still
Mhm.
going with Clemson.
Kyle Edwards, I love you, brother. Go Irish. I've got them winning this game because it's at home, because I think they played pretty well in big games this year. That
Mhm.
Ohio State game, they competed with them.
Yeah,
And I think the Marshall game and the Stanford game, they kind of went in maybe a little flat, and I don't think they're going to be flat with that raucous home environment in South Bend. Give me Notre Dame pulling the upset. I did not like what I saw from Clemson against Syracuse. I think that offense has issues, and I don't think their defense. I think their defensive front is really good. I think they could be had in the back end. And give me Notre Dame. I like them to pull the upset on this one and get Clemson out of the way because I'm tired of hearing about them in the top four. Next game, Texas traveling to Kansas State, coming off that big win against Oklahoma State. Who you got in this one, Graham? Does Texas kind of bounce back from that loss against the Pokes, or does Kansas State kind of keep it rolling this week?
yeah. I'm surprised that Texas is actually favored in this one. I think the line's 2.5, but they're playing in Kansas, which is sort of surprising.
Mm-hmm.
Hampton, my head tells me that Kansas State's going to win. My gut tells me Texas is going to win. I'm going with my gut. I think, Kansas State, after playing so great against Oklahoma State, I think Texas is going to have an answer. So give me the Longhorns and Quinn Ewers to respond in Manhattan, Kansas.
Mm-hmm. I like it. I like it. I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. I'm very conflicted about this one because I don't know who the quarterback is going to be for Kansas State. Even though the backups played really well, but
Yeah.
Adrian
Deuce Vaughn.
Martinez with Will Howard, Adrian Martinez, I think adds a different dynamic to this team, and he was having a really good year before he got hurt,
Yeah.
which is a shame. I think they beat TCU if he doesn't get hurt. I truly believe that they were up big in that game, and then TCU kind of crept back in as the game went along because Will Howard was playing okay, but I mean it's tough to get kind of thrust in to that environment. But I think I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go with Texas as well. I think Sark needs this one. I think they're 5-3 right now, if I'm not mistaken. They need this one to kind of get back on track because if you lose, you're 5-4, and those fans in Austin are not going to be happy with at best an 8-4 year,
Yeah.
especially with all the talent that you have on offense. I think Quinn Ewers kind of bounces back. He had a really bad game against Oklahoma State. Give me Texas like you for a bounce back win. Well, folks, we were going to pick Wake Forest versus North Carolina, but then my idiot self, thanks to Graham, was told that it's Wake Forest versus NC State, and I don't think any of y'all really care about the outcome of that. So we're going to just end the show here after predicting the 4 games that we have. We cannot wait for this weekend of college football. It's going to be a fun one. There's going to be a lot of upheaval, a lot of changes in the standings, and can't wait to talk about it next week. So, thank you so much for listening to the Pigskin Cafe. If this is your first time, thank you so much. We appreciate it. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we would love for you to hit that subscribe button, leave us a like, leave us a comment, and hit that notification bell so you are notified anytime a new video comes out. We've got this video this week, and then we're going to also be putting out a video about Auburn firing Brian Harsin, and kind of talk about that a little bit. Not really belabor the point, but I think it's worth our time to talk about it and your time to listen. So thank you so much for that. Be sure to follow us on social media, wherever you get your podcasts. We are available on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and also on YouTube, which we've really enjoyed being on YouTube this year, interacting with everybody there, and hope we continue to do that and continue to get feedback from you guys. We will be back talking Auburn, the Auburn disaster right now on the plains, but the Pigskin Cafe is closed for now. But until next time, chew on that.